Judiciary this Tuesday morning, June 30th, 9:45. Agenda is first. Thank you, members, everyone, for being here. I know Senator Kim's coming shortly, too. The 9:45 agenda is a leftover from a previous hearing. It's HB 1902. This extends the prohibition for large capacity magazines to all firearms rather than just pistols, which we've had for a long time. And it prohibits certain individuals from owning firearms who, as a minor, were diagnosed with behavioral, emotional, or mental disorders, unless the person has been medically documented to be no longer either adversely affected by the behavior, emotional, or mental disorder, or deemed a danger to themselves or others. Okay, recommendation on 1902 is to pass with some amendments. So we'll accept the proposed SD1, which is what we heard last week, I guess it was.
SD2.
I'm sorry, proposed SD2, excuse me. We'll adopt the proposed SD2, but we'll further amend it to delete the ability to grandfather in or transfer via inheritance. Wait a minute, is that right? Hang on a second. Okay. Sorry, my bad. So I'll start over again. So we will adopt the proposed SD2, which we heard last week. And there'll be a further amendment. This regards the motion picture and television exemption. We'll add language to the existing firearm exemption. There's already a firearm exemption, so we're not going to recreate the wheel. We'll put it in there instead, and we'll add language to the existing firearms exemption and permitting process to allow for the use of large capacity magazines as props, and to delete the language for entertainment events that was inserted in the large capacity magazine statute. This doesn't correspond to Hawaii law, so we're just going to integrate that exception into the current statute. And I'm sure there'll be some text. Questions or concerns?
I have a comment, yeah, Chair.
Go ahead.
Thank you for the amendments. I know that the law enforcement in particular had wanted the grandfather provisions to be deleted from the measure because it's difficult to enforce a large capacity ban when there's no proof whether there's a very difficult standard to be met in order to determine that the person acquired a high capacity magazine illegally, or when someone can just say, I already had it, or, I inherited it. But in speaking with my constituents, there was particular concern about the possibility that if that provision was put back in and this bill was passed, that it would immediately make a large swath of the community owners of illegal firearm. So, there's debate to the efficacy of the bill as it stands, but I appreciate this version. And so I just wanted to put that on the record that I'll be supporting it, and I appreciate the
Thanks for the comments. No, the bill, if you own one now, you get to keep it, and it just limits the ways you can get rid of it. I suppose theoretically you could also take it up to a state on the continent and sell it up there where it's legal. But
yeah,
but here in Hawaii, you can't sell or give away. You can only give away by inheritance. But the ones you have are perfectly legal, and they're yours to keep.
Well, and I think there's particular utility for mass casualty events, especially in the past when there have been instances where the individual apparently got the idea to commit a mass shooting and then acquire the firearms. And so going forward, that's what this bill, I think, addresses, which is a main priority of mine. So I appreciate
It'll make it harder anyway.
Yeah. Thank you.
Any other concerns or questions?
Yeah.
Senator
I understand the same thing what Senator is saying, but the thing is the guys who acquire these and the modifications are not law-abiding, and guys who care for their firearms and their magazines and not let anybody to take not everybody that's having these. I mean, I'm glad you guys are grandfathering clause that thing in, that the guys who have them can have them, that's fine. But I think going forward, I mean, if you look at it this day and age, I mean, we don't have too much mass shootings. We get more people getting stabbed. and whatnot, and it's very rare that we have these mass shootings. But all of these mass shootings, these guys acquire most of their stuff, whether it's illegal or not illegal. The guys who do these things are going to be getting it illegally anyway. You know what I mean? So to me, to chastise law-abiding citizens, and I brought this up to you guys before, and the reason for that, and before I was not looking at it the way we're looking at it now, because I think to myself, yeah, why somebody need 30 bullets for go hunting? But then I was kind of looking at it in the wrong way, because in self-defense and for protecting your house, your home, and your family, the limit on the pistol right now, on top of a handgun, if anybody went to handgun training or any kind of training on any kind of, and I was sharing this with you earlier, that's the reason why I never come HPD or law enforcement military, because it takes a special person to be able to pull out your gun and, you know, defend yourself and shoot somebody. So I'm going forward. The guys who have a limitation on having the capacity, and I'm not saying that I want to buy a gun that can hold 100 rounds, but if I'm at home and my home is being invaded and I have a limited capacity on what I'm going to be using it for protection, yeah, I can understand the hunting, what you guys are seeing that for protection. You're telling me 10 bullets with a person that has not had the experience, this is not TV, that you can shoot the gun upside down, behind your back, under your leg, and shoot the guy. The chances of shooting one target the first 3 rounds you shoot, not happening. So you're going to limit them 10 rounds and you get 8 guys coming to your home. I mean, yeah, we haven't had that here too, but I'm just thinking about now, I'm looking at it differently, watching these guys go through the training. It's not that easy to pull a gun and shoot a target. People think it is. I don't care how much training you get. If somebody breaking into your home and you panic, you only get 10 bullets, you shoot the walls and the roof, and you don't even shoot the guy. So, you know, I understand that you guys had put the restrictions on the pistol, and I understand that, but going forward, that was just a thing that I think that if, you know, somebody needed to protect themselves at this time and age, that was something, because, I mean, of course, nobody needs 30, everybody will say it differently, but I don't think anybody needs 30 rounds to go hunting one bird. But protect yourself and your family. I think already we got limitations on the pistol, on the handgun, taking away, and most of the manufacturers that send guns to Hawaii now, I don't know if any of you guys did any of the research, majority of the guns that is sent to Hawaii that has magazines for rifles, they don't make it less than 20 round clips. So you're gonna have these guys buy guns manufacturally made for 20 rounds, and then now they're gonna have to buy one restrictor. Remington and I think which is Smith & Wesson will not make those adjustments on the magazines if coming to Hawaii. So I don't know how certain guns will end up being eliminated or outright banned in Hawaii, because the manufacturer will not make those guns. And that's the sad part. I mean, shotguns, you get limited 7 rounds, whatever, that's fine. Majority of the rifles that have clips, the companies and the manufacturers don't make it less than that. So you're gonna limit it, somebody that wants to buy a gun, or a rifle rather, and having them limited in what they can, selection they can choose because of the manufacturer's minimum requirements, that they don't make anything less than 20 rounds, if I'm not mistaken. So then now that it's going to limit the supply of certain guns that they can acquire here in Hawaii, going to have a restriction. That's what I think a lot of guys out there is afraid of, that they're going to start being eliminated on the choice that they get to what kind of guns they can buy. I mean, it was okay, I guess, not really okay, but it was okay to limit the capacity on the pistol, on the handgun, because the handgun companies still made them. But there's going to be a lot of rifles that is being sold in Hawaii now, and the guys who have it now, that is ready to sell it at their store, after this passed, they're not going to be able to sell it anymore. So that's, I think, the problem that's going forward with this bill. I just figured if somebody's going to buy it legally, they're going to obtain it legally, shouldn't have a restriction on a rifle capacity. But like I said, everybody has different reasons for it. I just looked into it a little bit more, in a sense of eliminating the amount of rifles, because at one time they wanted to ban shotguns, 12-gauge shotguns that people use to go shoot birds, skeet shooting, So that's the thing. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I don't know if you talk to anybody that goes down to the rifle range and do target practicing and the capacity of what they need and amount that they have to carry with them. I'm just saying we're going to be giving the upper hand to the guys who are doing mostly the illegal activities out there. And going forward, the guys who have the guns to sell that already has the capacity of 20 rounds or more. But this is what, 10 rounds, right? 10 rounds capacity. So anything more than 10 rounds, they're not going to be able to sell the inventory that they have now.
I don't think there's any point in us having a full-scale debate on gun protection legislation. So I understand what you're saying, and yeah, is it right?
Yeah, I just saying, I mean, is that true, right? When this passes, the guns that they have now in the store to sell, they're not going to be able to sell it after this bill passes.
Not in Hawaii. Anyone else with concerns or questions? Okay, if not, Vice Chair for the vote.
Members voting on HB 1902, HD2, SD1, passing with amendments. Chair Rhodes.
Aye.
Vice Chair goes aye. Senator Gabbard. Reservations. Senator Kim.
Aye.
Senator Favela.
No,
Recommendation adopted.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to our 9:46 a.m. agenda. This is a decision-making agenda. Of course, there is written testimony is allowed is accepted. And we have a bunch. I don't know if it's up yet. It's all up now, so you can take a look at it online if you want to see who testified on which bill. So if it's okay with members, we'll just go straight into it and we'll have the discussions of whatever discussions we want to have in public so that at least people can watch on streaming online as to what's going on. If that's seeing no objections, we'll go ahead and do it that way. First up is HB 1529 relating to student journalists. This allows student journalists at public schools to exercise freedom of speech and freedom of press in school-sponsored media. On this one, in normal times, I would move it along and try to figure something out in conference. These are not normal times, and it's not ready to go, so I'm going to defer it indefinitely. Next up is HB 1620 relating to the administration of justice. This amends the effect of finding an offendant charged with a petty misdemeanor not involving violence or attempted violence unfit to proceed, amends the requirements for fitness determinations, court-appointed examiners and examination reports, authorizes the courts to enter into agreements to divert into residential, rehabilitative, or other treatment those defendants whose physical or mental disease, disorder, or defect is believed to have become or will become an issue in a judicial case, and amends the requirements for appointed qualified examiners to perform examination for penal responsibility. And there's some other things too, but I think that's the highlights. Recommendation on this one is to move with some amendments. We'll make it effective upon approval, require a report from the judiciary with consultation with the county prosecutors. And we'll just have 3 years of reports once it goes into effect. So there will be a report 40 days before the 21 session, 40 days before the 22 session, 40 days before the 23 session. That's it. Questions or concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair.
Okay, members voting on HB 1620, HD2, SD1, passing with amendments. Noting the presence of all members, are there any noes or reservations? Seeing none, the recommendation is adopted.
Okay, thank you. Next up is HB 1678. This prohibits a person from advertising or conducting a live musical performance or production through the use of a deceptive affiliation under certain circumstances, enables action against deceptive practices by imposing penalties and private rights of action. This one I recommend that we pass as is. Concerns or questions? Seeing none, Senator Keokolole.
Members voting on HB 1678, HD1, SD1, moving unamended, noting all members present, any reservations or nays, recommendation adopted.
Thank you. Next is HB 1701 relating to equal pay. This conforms statutory provisions against wage discrimination with other prohibitions on employment discrimination, clarifies allowable justifications for compensation differentials and remedies for pay disparity, requires employers to disclose wage ranges to employees and prospective employees. Recommendation on 1701. Is to amend it to make it effective upon approval. Questions or concerns? If not, Vice Chair.
Okay, HB 1701, HD1, SD1 with amendments. Noting all members present. Any opposition, reservations? Recommendation adopted.
Thank you. Moving on to HB 1748, provides that all animal parts, products, or items containing prohibited animal parts or products involved in the commission of a wildlife trafficking or certain hunting offenses shall be considered contraband to be forfeited and disposed of by the state. On the first offense, I think at this point, that happens on the second and subsequent offenses. Recommendation is to pass as is. Questions or concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair.
Voting on HB 1748, HD1, the recommendation is to pass unamended. Noting all members present, any opposition or reservations? Recommendation adopted.
Thank you, members. Moving on to HB 1942. This has members of the clergy, commercial computer technicians, commercial film, and photographic print or image processors to the category of persons who are required to report child abuse and neglect to DHS, to Department of Human Services or police. Provides a safe harbor for reporting by clergy of known or suspected child abuse that was previously unreported. Recommendation on this one is to pass with amendments. Currently, there is no confessional exemption in the bill, so we will insert a confessional exemption for information learned solely in the confessional, so that if the same information is discovered outside of the confessional, the reporter is still mandated to report the part she heard independently of the confessional. We'll also insert a confessional exemption in the safe harbor language so that if the same information was discovered outside of confessional, the reporter may report. So this is for people who decide that they saw something that they should have reported and they report it, and we won't ding them for doing so up to March 1st, 2021. But it will still have this, it'll have the exemption for the, so that if they brought it up in a confessional, they still don't have to do it. Well, they'll put in a definition of penitential communication, and as I mentioned, we'll amend the safe harbor date to March 1, 2021 to provide approximately 6 months to report previously known information, and we'll make it effective upon approval.
So the confession will be protected, that's what you're saying?
Yes, but if the person discovers the same information someone outside a confessional, then they would be obligated to report it. Okay. Any other questions or concerns? If not, Senator Ko Kaloli for the vote.
Voting on HB 1942 HD2 SD1 passing with amendments. All members present. Any opposition or reservations? Recommendation adopted.
Thank you, members. Moving on to HB 1978. This specifies that the family court has jurisdiction in proceedings concerning the custody or guardianship of an immigrant child pursuant to a motion for special immigrant juvenile factual findings requesting the determination the child was abused, neglected, or abandoned before the age of 18. Recommendation is to make effective upon approval. Questions or concerns? If not, Vice Chair.
HB 1978 HD1 passing with amendments. Noting all members present, any opposition or reservations? Recommendation adopted.
Thank you. Next up is HB 2043. This allows an unlicensed mental health professional working under the supervision of a licensed mental health professional to provide mental health treatment or counseling services to minors without parental or legal guardian consent, knowledge, or participation. Requires a mental health professional to ensure that the covered entity has been notified, covered entity meaning generally insurance companies, has been notified that minor initiated mental health treatment or counseling service should not be disclosed. Requires a covered entity upon notification that minor initiated mental health treatment or counseling service should not be disclosed to maintain the confidentiality of minor initiated mental health treatment or counseling services. Recommendation on HB 2043 will make it effective on January 30, 2021 as requested by DOH due to insurers' concerns. And I think that's it. We figured out we covered any of these things. Yeah, okay, that's it. Just make effective on January 30, 2021 due to DOH, requested by DOH and reflecting insurer's concerns. Questions or comments? If not, Senator Keo Kalole.
Voting on HB 2043 HD2 SD1, passing with amendments. Noting all members present, is there any opposition?
And no, for me.
No, I have no's for Senator Favela and Gabbard. Any other opposition or reservations? Reservations for Senator Kim. Recommendation adopted.
Thank you, members. Next up is HB 2054 relating to employment practices, prohibits an employer from requiring an employee to enter into a non-disclosure agreement pertaining to sexual harassment or sexual assault, prohibits an employer from retaliating against an employee for disclosing or discussing sexual harassment or sexual assault. Recommendation here is to pass unamended. Questions or concerns? If not, Vice Chair.
Voting on HB 2054 HD1 SD1, passing unamended. Of the members present, any opposition or reservations? Seeing none, the recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Moving on to HB 2091. This allows the University of Hawaii to conduct criminal history record checks on current or prospective employees and contractors and their employees whose duties include ensuring security of campus facilities and persons. I was going to kill him, but then I realized it's you. So. My intention is to kill it. Just because there's already a process. We're going to give away all Deacon's prerogatives. On HB 2091, this allows the University of Hawaii to conduct criminal history record checks on current or prospective employees and contractors and employees whose duty include ensuring security of campus facilities and persons. I'm going to defer this one indefinitely. I don't understand the need for it, and we have tons to do right now, so we're going to let that one go. HB 2097 relating to medical cannabis authorizes the Department of Health to consider processes that may allow cannabis or manufactured cannabis products that fail testing to be remediated. Allows the Department of Health to allow licensed dispensaries to provide educational and scientific information and sponsor events related to medical cannabis. Recommendation on 2097. So we'll make it effective on January 1st, 2021. We'll accept DOH's recommended amendments, which will categorize edible cannabis products along with other products. In the edible cannabis products definition, clarify that they are neither a drug, food, or bottled beverage and are not regulated as such products. And that's it. Any questions or concerns? If not, Vice Chair.
Members voting on HB 2097 HD2 SD1, passing with amendments. Noting all members present, any opposition or reservations? Seeing none, the recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. Let's see, we're on to HB 2124. This prohibits certain former state employees from representing certain interests in a legislature administrative action before the state for 12 months after the termination of employment. So currently, there's the 12-month restriction on former legislators from representing any person or business for a fee consideration to include Right now, there are restrictions on the former legislators from representing persons or business for a fee, but this would expand it to include any administrative action beyond the current definition. Would add a new restriction to prohibit representation of a person or business for a fee consideration by high-ranking state officials and legislative employees for 12 months after termination regarding any legislative or administrative action. And it amends exemptions for persons employed by the state for less than 180 days, clarifies that exemption does not apply to the prohibition for employees who have insider knowledge. So normally 180, you would not be covered if you were hired for less than 180 days unless you have some kind of insider knowledge. So the recommendation here is to pass with a good effective date. We'll make it effective on January 1, 2021, which will mean that anybody retiring from the legislature this year will not be covered by the new restrictions. It would only be those of us who are lucky enough to serve longer. Questions or concerns? If not, Senator Keokalole.
Voting on HB 2124, HD1, SD1, moving with amendments. Noting all members present, any opposition or reservations? Seeing none, recommendation adopted.
Thank you. Next up is HB 2162. This clarifies the fees tow companies may charge, clarifies the duties of tow companies when the vehicle owners arrive on the scene while their vehicles are in the process of being hooked up, requires tow and storage companies to accept credit cards, subjects violations of the towing statute to the penalties and remedies under the state's unfair deceptive acts or practices law. And the recommendation on this one is to pass with some amendments. Make it effective. We'll make it effective on October 1st of this year, 2020. We'll adopt the Office of Consumer Protection's requested amendments. We'll add to the definition of vehicle owner the insurance company that insures the vehicle and any person authorized to operate the vehicle pursuant to any other law. Since the definition of the definition of vehicle owner includes the last registered of the vehicle, add last before registered owner in two places. We'll include debit cards as another acceptable form of payment when paying the towing company. For additional oversight, we'll include the penalties and remedies under HRS Chapter 47. This is regarding consumer protection in two places. And I believe that's it. Questions or concerns? Since I can't really see anybody, I guess not. Okay, go ahead, Senator Keokalole.
Voting on HB 2162, HD2, the recommendation is to pass with amendments. Noting all members present, are there any noes or reservations? Recommendation adopted.
Thank you, members. Next up is HB 2253, amends the statewide traffic code to allow for the chairperson of the BLNR and county police chiefs to designate state or county employees or contractors to issue citation for traffic tickets. The recommendation here is, it's really just technical. We're going to reword it and essentially we'll do the same thing, but we'll delete the amendments to section 291C 165, and we'll delete the current amendment to section 291C-167, and instead add this language. For purposes of this section, the term officer shall include but not be limited to any employee or contractor of the Department of Land and Natural Resources designated by its director, and any employee or contractor of a county designated by the county's chief of police to issue such a citation. So it does the same thing. We think it does it more elegantly. And we'll delete the savings clause because it's not necessary. Questions or concerns? If not, Vice Chair.
Members voting on HB 2253, HD1, SD1, the recommendation is to pass with amendments. Noting all.
No for me.
Okay. No for Senator Favela. Any other members in opposition? Any other members with reservations? Okay, all other members vote aye. Recommendation adopted.
Thank you very much. Next is HB 2273. This increases the penalty for violation of wages and hour laws to a Class C felony. We have scheduled, joint with Ways and Means on Thursday, a similar bill. So I'm going to defer this one for the moment. We'll defer it to July 2 at 10:45 a.m. in room 016. 10:45. Next up is HB 2317. This is relating to securities. It protects elders and vulnerable adults from financial exploitation in relation to securities. Recommendation here is to change may to shall for the reporting requirements to the Securities Commission. This was actually requested by the insurance agency group NAIFA, and we did get prior concurrence. So any questions, concerns on this one? If not, Vice Chair.
Members voting on HB 2317, HD2, SD1. The recommendation is to pass this measure with amendments. Noting the excused absence of Senator Favela, any opposition or reservations? Seeing none, the recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Next up is HB 2340. This clarifies prohibited activities related to anatomical gifts and disposition of bodies. Recommendation is to pass with an amendment. We'll accept DOH's requested amendment to change the phrase organ procurement organization to procurement organization. That's it. Any questions or concerns? If not, Vice Chair.
Voting on HB 2340 HD2 with amendments of the four members present. Any reservations or opposition?
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, why don't we just start over again on that bill? So the recommendation on HB 2340 clarifies prohibited actions related to anatomical gifts and disposition of bodies. We'll make it, let's see. On approval, does that make sense? Or you put it off?
There's no comments on it.
Let's give them a little time. We'll make it effective on January 1st, 2021. And then the other amendment I already mentioned to change the phrase organ procurement organization to procurement organization. And that will be it. Sorry about that. Any questions or concerns? If not, Vice Chair.
Okay, members voting on HB 2340 HD2, the recommendation is to pass with the noted amendments. Senator Favela is excused of the remaining members. Any reservations or opposition? Seeing none, the recommendation is adopted.
Thank you. Next up is HB 2420, clarifies the meaning of program or activity receiving state financial assistance, excludes cases within the scope of the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act from the jurisdiction of the Hawaii Civil Rights Commission. Recommendation 2440 is to, make effective upon approval. Questions or concerns? If not, Senator Keokalole.
HB 2420 HD2 SD1, the recommendation is to pass with amendments of the four members present. Any reservations or opposition? Recommendation adopted.
Thank you. Next up is HB 2572. This modernizes personal information for the purposes of security breach of personal information law, prohibits the sale of contact tracing information without consent, amends provisions relating to electronic eavesdropping law, prohibits certain manipulated images of individuals. I'm going to defer this until July 2, 10:45 a.m. in this room 016. Still trying to work out various kinks and issues. Moving on to HB 2709, relating to the Uniform Probate Code, requires a personal representative of a decedent appointed under the Uniform Probate Code to notify the police departments of the appropriate county of any and all firearms in the state. Requires the police department to certify that all registered firearms in an estate and other firearms of which the police department has been notified are properly transferred and disposed of before the estate may close. Recommendation is to make effective December 1st, 2020. Questions or concerns? Seeing none, Senator Keokalole.
HB 2709 HD2, the recommendation is to pass with amendments of the four members present. Any reservations or opposition? Recommendation adopted.
Thank you. Finally, for this agenda is HB 2750, relating to monetary obligations, prohibits the imposition of restrictions on a person's ability to obtain or renew a driver's license or to register, renew the registration of, or transfer or receive title to a motor vehicle as a consequence of unpaid monetary obligations under certain circumstances. And it allows certain individuals to petition the court for a driver's license or motor vehicle insurance. Recommendation here is to make it effective on approval and we'll apply it to citations issued on or after November 2020. In addition, you can petition the court to remove an early, well, these are called stoppers, so you can petition the court to remove an earlier stopper. But the ones that will apply to directly are those issued on or after November 1, 2020. Questions, concerns? Seeing none, Vice Chair.
Members voting on HB 2750 HD2 SD1, the recommendation is to pass with amendments of the four members present. Any reservations? Any opposition? Seeing none, the recommendation is adopted.
Thank you, members. That concludes our business for today. We do have a joint hearing on Thursday with Ways and Means. It has about 10 bills on it, and we have I think 2 bills left over from today that we will be voting on to that day, but the WAM, the one joint with WAM is at 10, and then the one for the leftovers is 10:45. WAM's in the auditorium, one of the other ones, the one that's just us is here. Thank you very much.